Welcome to Stop the Fight, Episode 4. And today we're talking about this weekend's fights with Virgil Ortiz and Artur Beterbiev. Let's go.
Don't brag about taking my side piece! Don't brag about taking my side piece, no!
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy, just...
All right, so this weekend, the zone, we got a nice welterweight action. We have Vergil Ortiz versus Maurice Hooker. Now, Virgil Ortiz is our 16-0, 16 knockout prospect. A young kid, 22, Oscar de la Hoya stable. All right, recently, Virgil Ortiz had fought Samuel Vargas on the zone. And if you haven't seen that fight, it was a great testing fight. Virgil Ortiz was tested by Samuel Vargas. Samuel Vargas is a nice but tough fighter. He really tested Ortiz, especially in that first half of the fight. Go watch it. He was able to weather Ortiz's power, was able to throw some leather back, was able to put some pressure on Ortiz. Ortiz reacted beautifully, of course, stopping Samuel Vargas in the second half of the fight. I think it was the 7th round. Jack Reese waved an end to the contest. Now, Virgil Ortiz has a really high upside. During the fight, the commentary crew had mentioned that, maybe it's Virgil Ortiz and not Ryan Garcia who's going to be the big star in the Golden Boy stable. Now, I don't know. Maybe, but he's definitely a very talented young man and definitely one we should look for. If you watch the Vargas fight, you can see that he can throw punches from a variety of angles. He's able to double up his right hand easily, and his jab is pinpoint accurate and piston strong. So this is not a one-handed fighter that we sometimes see with prospects. They'll have either a great hook, a great straight right, or maybe they're a phenomenal jabber. You see coming out of Eastern Europe, sometimes these fighters, they're like fencemen almost, but they don't have much else. Virgil Ortiz seems to have a variety of punches, and this is excellent for a young up-and-coming. I remember seeing the same thing with Canelo. A lot of punches, an uppercut, a left hook, a straight right, all of that, A level. Now, as with any power puncher, sometimes the defense is a little bit neglected, but Virgil Ortiz is young. I'm sure he can fix some of these holes. There are points when he would dip to his left. You'll see that his right hand comes down, and Vargas was able to land a jab right off of that, simply because, you leave your face exposed. If you're dipping to your left and your right hand comes down, it's easy to hit you. But these are minor changes again. Virgil Ortiz is only 22 years old. And he has plenty of time to correct some of these defensive flaws, and these flaws are a little bit expected of such a for a power puncher such as Ortiz. And of course, Vargas is no slouch, so he's getting hit by a fighter who's there to try and hit him. Sometimes some of these fighters, they give up right away when they're facing a young hot prospect. They're not even really trying to throw; they're just afraid. So you sometimes see padded defensive stats. Oh, the fighter X landed nothing against Gary Russell. Well, Gary Russell sometimes fights nobody. Literally who? So, again, this isn't to say anything poorly about Gary Russell. He's a great fighter himself, but it really depends who you're fighting. Lomachenko has an excellent defense. People aren't landing much on him, and recently he's fought high-caliber opposition. Versus some of these other fighters who they're really not fighting anyone, and their defensive stats look padded, so when they actually get in there with a killer, they're getting lit up. And you're wondering, well, what happened there? Poor opposition. So, again, Virgil Ortiz's defensive lapses are there, but they're minor. The only reason I even bring them up is because, well, he's fighting Maurice Hooker, who's a really good fighter. And because Virgil Ortiz is approaching that world-class level where we have to now take, a magnifying glass when analyzing him, a little microscope, see what he's doing. Some of these, I'm not gonna call out some of these flaws on a fighter like Raymond Ford, who's still growing and still coming up because, there's more time to develop. But Virgil Ortiz is entering that world-class level. So what may look like only a minor flaw has to be examined when we're talking about the world-class, the championship-level fights and fighters. And at 22, the young man is. Again, I'm not saying he has a bad defense, just that it's something that could be worked on. Most power punchers have this issue. This isn't even really an issue. Just it comes with the game. It comes with the nature of being a power puncher and a great offensive fighter such as Virgil Ortiz is. Now let's talk about who he's fighting. Let's talk Maurice Hooker. Now, Maurice Hooker was undefeated just 2 years ago. He had actually taken Terry Flanagan's back in 2018, 2019, something. 2018. And He's a really good fighter. You're looking at him, you're seeing, oh well, he's got a loss, but he's got a few draws. But hold on a second. Maurice Hooker is an excellent boxer. An excellent boxer. This is actually a real test for Virgil Ortiz. No guarantee that he actually wins this fight. Sometimes people, they look at a power puncher and they think, well, he's going to walk through whoever and everybody. Well, he may not with Maurice Hooker. Maurice Hooker can move. He can pivot on that front foot. He'll move to your left. He'll move to your right. He has a few defensive flaws himself. He likes to stand in the pocket. If you watch his fight against Jose Ramirez, you'll see that he's standing right in that really dangerous range. That range you can be hit at. And against a power puncher like Virgil Ortiz, this is gonna spell disaster. But, Maurice Hooker's a little bit taller. If he fights off his back foot, we're gonna force the young man to come forward. And I think this is really what both fighters will probably want here. You don't want to, Maurice Hooker is not a great power puncher, but he does have some pop. In that Jose Ramirez fight, I think he stunned Ramirez and certainly got his respect a few points, but that's, I think, due to his accurate boxing. But of course, Maurice Hooker, like I said, was knocked out because he likes to stand in that middle zone, that pocket. And that's a dangerous spot to be, really dangerous spot to be. Only elite fighters can handle, being in there. Floyd Mayweather can stand there all day. Remember, to this day, Canelo's looking for Floyd Mayweather. He still can't find him. Lomachenko is a defensive master, but he uses a lot of his feet. He uses a lot of his athletic ability to move in that pocket. It's really dangerous to stand in the pocket. And Maurice Hooker just does not have those talents. This isn't to say he's a bad fighter, but he doesn't have the talents that certainly not Floyd or Lomachenko have. Now, what else can we say about him? Well, his loss against Jose Ramirez there's nothing embarrassing about it. Jose Ramirez is an undefeated fighter who's fighting Josh Taylor for all the marbles at 140. And prior to the Josh Taylor fight, he had beaten Victor Postol, who himself is a really good 140-pounder. He lost to Terrence Crawford, but who hasn't? He gave a respectable showing for himself. So Jose Ramirez has a chance to be a unified, undisputed light welterweight. There is absolutely no shame in losing to him. But against Virgil Ortiz, Maurice Hooker, if he doesn't move out of that pocket, he's getting knocked out again. Without question. Jose Ramirez has some pop, but he doesn't have Virgil Ortiz pop. And if he was able to light up Maurice Hooker that way, that was a great finish, by the way. Maurice Hooker got hit with a right hand, and Jose Ramirez jumped on him on the ropes, and dude was out on his feet. Really, really kind of brutal knockout. Virgil Ortiz is going to do worse than that. If Maurice Hooker cannot find a way to not stand in front of him like that, he has to get out of that pocket. He takes a right hand from Virgil Ortiz in the mid-rounds. It's going to be over. Now let's talk about the odds. If you're a bettor, the odds don't look good. You have Virgil Ortiz now I'm looking at DraftKings, is going to be minus 1667, and Maurice Hooker is a plus 675. Your over-under over here is under 6.5 rounds at minus 115. Over 6.5 rounds, minus 115. So your best bet to make any money is try and predict when does Maurice Hooker get knocked out. I wouldn't even throw beer money on Maurice Hooker, tell you the truth. This is a fighter who lets through right hands against a puncher who has excellent right hands. I wouldn't even throw beer money there. If you're gonna bet anything, you want to bet on the over-under. I like Virgil Ortiz to not come out early. So there's my under 6.5. Now let's talk about the other important fight this weekend. We have Artur Beterbiev versus Adam Denis in Russia. Now Artur Beterbiev is our light heavyweight champion, WBC IBF. He's undefeated. He's got 15 wins, 15 knockouts. I was not sold on Artur Beterbiev until he beat Whyte. Now, that fight was a fight of attrition. Whyte came out was the better fighter, but you just felt it. He couldn't deal with the pressure, with the power of Beterbiev. Beterbiev kept coming forward. Whyte boxed beautifully, but eventually the pressure was too much. The power was too much. Beterbiev is relenting, but he could be hurt. We've seen him hurt. A left hook dropped him when he fought Callum Johnson. He let a lot of punches go in that fight. So he has defensive holes that could be exploited. So, at 36, I think he's entering that point where he's becoming ripe for the taking. Is Adam Deines that guy from Germany? No, I don't think so. I don't think he is that guy from Germany. Adam Deines has 19 wins, 10 by knockout, 1 loss, 1 draw. And from what I've seen, this is just not the fighter to do it. There are fighters at light heavyweight that I think could beat him. I think given his age, if Joe Smith can handle his power, I think Joe Smith can stop Beterbiev. Hell, I think if Kovalev has something left in him, can probably give him a good fight. But I think at this point, unfortunately, Kovalev just doesn't have the punch resistance anymore to do it. Dmitry Bivol could outbox him. As I said, with Gvozdyk, you saw the formula, the blueprint, how to do it. You got to move. And I think with each month, with each year, Beterbiev slows down a little bit. You know, he spent a lot of time fighting a bunch of nobodies. Early on in his career, I thought he was going to be very known, make a big splash at light heavyweight. You know, in 2014, he knocked out Tavares Cloud. At that point, Tavares Cloud was a somebody. And I thought, oh, here it goes. You know, this is going to be a real run for him. You know, that was what, 7 years ago now. I mean, he was 29 years old. I thought he had a magical 5 years ahead of him. But since that point, he beat an old Gabriel Campillo, and he beat Gvozdyk. You know, that doesn't say much. It doesn't show us much. And unfortunately, I think he kind of wasted his career. Gvozdyk is a signature win for sure, but you don't get all of Gvozdyk's win. Gvozdyk beat Adonis Superman. You know, Gvozdyk's career so far, outside of getting knocked out, was better than Beterbiev's, even though he lost that fight. So if Beterbiev is going to make a splash at light heavyweight, he's got to do it now. You don't get better in your late 30s. And nowhere, in no sport do you get better in your late 30s. So like I said, I think Beterbiev wins this fight easily, but I think Beterbiev is here for the taking. I think his time is coming to an end. And this should be a lesson to other young fighters. If you want to make a legacy, you have to fight somebody. Gary Russell Jr. has all the talent in the world, but prior to and since his loss to Lomachenko, he hasn't really fought many people. For whatever reason. You know, yeah, he's got that win over Joseph Diaz. You know, it was a decent fight against Kiko Martinez, but he hasn't fought anybody. The joke was that his greatest opponent is TBA, because that's what it always looked like. Like, who's he fighting? And I think with Beterbiev, it's a similar story. You need to fight somebody. You need to win. You know, this is a problem that Golovkin had. He never had that. Golovkin fought a lot of B-level fighters, but he was always missing that A-level fighter. By the time he got to Canelo, he was already a little bit on the decline. Yeah, I thought he won that first fight. Yeah, I thought he could be given that second fight. But he doesn't have that emphatic win. You know, all of us coming into that first Canelo fight thought Golovkin was going to knock him out. But in the back of our heads, I think we all saw that he was starting to slip a little. I think we all saw the Cal Brook fight. And yeah, he absolutely knocked Cal Brook out, broke his jaw, but that was a welter coming up. You know, and this isn't really Golovkin's fault. Maybe you can argue, oh, he should have made the Ward fight happen. But Golovkin is a 160-pounder. I think it's very clear to see that. Ward would have been a little bit big for him. So with Artur Beterbiev, I think you're kind of seeing like a worst-case scenario almost for a career. And I mean, of course, a worst-case scenario for the talent level. Many, many, many fighters would love to be an undefeated, 100% knockout ratio fighter. But when you see a talent, a physical talent, at light heavyweight like Beterbiev is, he's huge for a light heavyweight. When you see a person like that, you expect him to like run through everybody. Or at least you want to see him tested. You want to see him fight the champs. A Kovalev fight was never made, and I know they didn't quite like each other. Now I believe Kovalev would have absolutely stopped him, seeing what I've seen from Beterbiev in his career. But nonetheless, we just don't know. We have this undefeated, 100% knockout ratio fighter, champ, who is, who's untested outside of the Gvozdyk fight. So, I really do wish the best for Beterbiev. I hope he can still show us something. I would love to see him against Joe Smith Jr. I think that fight is fireworks. I think obviously if Joe Smith can handle the power, he can knock him out. But no guarantee of that. Beterbiev can easily just spark him. Joe Smith Jr. is not going to box with him like Gvozdyk did. He's going to be there for the taking. So we can really see what the power is like on Beterbiev. Some of the other fights we have going on this week are tonight you have Alberto Machado fighting in Puerto Rico against Angel Fierro. But, with Puerto Rican fighters nowadays, we haven't found that great one since Miguel Cotto again. Alberto Machado was an undefeated kind of like prospect coming into that fight with Cancio. And in the first round, he knocks him down. But then he wilts under the pressure. It seems like recently a lot of these Puerto Rican fighters are wilting under the pressure. Vergil comes to mind. A lot of power, a lot of speed on these guys. But when they're met with a lot of adversity, something seems to give. Maybe it's a training style. With Vergil, it looks like he's just emptying his gas tank early in the fight. And then he doesn't have the stamina to continue moving. And it seems so far away now. But at one point, people considered Vergil to have a higher ceiling than Lomachenko. There were people who were arguing that, no, Vergil was really the best fighter coming out of those Olympics and coming out of the amateurs. That he's really, like, if they just met in the pros, can you imagine Vergil versus Lomachenko now? No way. That's not even remotely the same level. But they look to be. Now, of course, Vergil had an unfortunate motorcycle accident earlier on in his career that forced him to take some time off. But that was already after he had lost. Already he had stopped. Now, with Machado, he took a right hand to the body in the fourth round of that first fight. He went down and the fight was really over from that point on. He was walked down and stopped after outboxing and knocking down Cancio. And you're wondering what's going on. Where, Miguel Cotto fought against a guy who had plaster in his hands until his face looked like ground beef. And only then did he finally take a knee. A monster champion. And, Puerto Rico has a great fight culture. And it's had great champions come out of Puerto Rico. And we're waiting for the next one. Something for this generation. They have a lot of good fighters coming out of Puerto Rico. But we need that great one. And we all keep searching. We know they're coming. It's going to happen. When? Who? I don't know. But I think our eyes are perked. They're open. We want a Puerto Rican fighter. Now to the UK. Lee McGregor. Young, 24-year-old kid, undefeated prospect. 9-0, 7 knockouts. He's moving up a little bit in class, yeah? Kareem Guarifi. If I'm saying that right. Now, Lee McGregor looks pretty good. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes or how he develops. Some of these UK fighters, they look pretty good early on in their career, but they seem to... They can't make it that world-class level. Well, they have a problem at that world-class level. The following day in the UK, you're going to have Krzysztof Głowkowski against Lawrence Oakley at cruiserweight. Now, this is a pretty important fight. Głowkowski's no slouch. Very high-level cruiserweight. Has only lost to Britis Prescott and Alexander Usyk. So this is a really high-level cruiserweight. And Lawrence Oakley is an up-and-coming prospect. Also a younger fighter for cruiserweight at 28 years old, 15-0, 12 knockouts. He's making a little bit of a splash. And this is going to be one of those test-em fights. Where does he go? I think there are rumors he wants to go to heavy. But we're going to see. I want to see what this kid is made of, and this is going to be a really big fight for him. And Głowkowski had recently lost to Marius Britis, and that was a sick fight. It went 3 rounds, and it was a slugfest. It was dirty, and it was a slugfest the entire time. Like, Głowkowski likes to fight. He likes to fight. So I think Okoly's really going to be tested here. Głowkowski is no slouch. Not at all. He lost to the other 2 best cruisers. So I would really, if I were Okoly, I hope he didn't underestimate him. I mean, Głowkowski wound up knocking out Marco Huck. He wound up beating Steve Cunningham. He wound up beating Maxim Vlasov, who's fighting Joe Smith Jr. in a few fights. This is a really high-level fighter at cruiserweight. He will absolutely test Okoly. And if Okoly gets through him easily, we have a real fighter on our hands. We have a real fighter on our hands. Someone that we should look forward to. And if Głowkowski wins, well, I think the most obvious choice is the rematch with Britis. As if this fight can go longer than the first fight in a similar fashion, we have a fight of the year on our hands. Those first 3 rounds were really good. Now in some rumorville in boxing, Mauricio Suleiman, The president of the WBC has talked about a Wilder versus Whyte title eliminator scenario. Now, that would be something. But the thing is, it's too early to mention Whyte in any fight. He has a rematch with Povetkin. And while Povetkin has had COVID and is another year older, he knocked Dillian Whyte out cold in his last fight. Knocked him out cold. Knockout of the year. I've said it before. So, on paper, Wilder Whyte does sound good. But, with Wilder likes to just, Whyte just likes to stand there. I think Wilder probably knocks him out, unless his confidence was really shattered in that second Fury fight. But like I said, I think it's a little bit too early. I would love to see that fight. I love it. No guarantee that Whyte makes it past Povetkin a second time. I think he does, simply because of how old Povetkin is and how sick he was with the COVID. So I think he should get through him, but no guarantee. Although that, like I said, that is a good fight. So if we get a Wilder Whyte fight in the summer, that would be great. That would be great. Also, we have Jermall Charlo calling out Benavidez. Yeah, that would be awesome. But I think Jermall still has a lot of work to do at 160. I don't think this fight's going to happen anytime soon. Benavidez certainly is not coming down from 168. He looks like he barely gets down to 168. He's not going down to 160. And I just don't see a reason for Charlo to move up to 168. I mean, obviously he's going to be chasing Canelo, but there's still fights for him at 160 to be made, and I just don't see a reason for him to fight Benavidez yet. I think it's a good trash talk. Maybe they could meet somewhere down the line. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think Benavidez will sooner move up to 175 than Charlo moves up to 168. And as long as Golovkin's still part of the conversation at 160, you really want that name. You really want that scalp on your resume. With him getting older, I think this is something Charlo should aim for. You know, gives you the name, gives you the prestige. And with him getting older, it's almost like, would anyone really take Golovkin at this age to beat Charlo after the kind of outings he's recently had? Probably not. Probably not. I think most people will see it as an easy victory for Charlo. There's also Munguia. You can quiet that prospect up. I think Andrade, unfortunately, is just never going to get that fight. I hope he does, but I don't think he will. He's just not known enough. Outside of the hardcore boxing fans, nobody knows who Andrade is. And that's unfortunate because we really can't tell what his class is. He looks to be the part. He passes the eye test. But we all know in boxing, the eye test is not enough. And in an episode where we talk about Vergil and Machado, it's doubly apparent. And as I said, I rewatched the Estrada and Gonzalez fight. Yeah, I'm even more convinced that Gonzalez won. I think I may have even been a little bit too favorable to Estrada on my first watching. I think I was just sure that Estrada was going to win. Then when I was watching him lose, I was like, oh, I guess some of these rounds are close. And they were pretty close. But on rewatch, I had fewer close rounds and more Gonzalez rounds. I think I scored a 116, 112 on rewatch. And I think it actually could have even been a little wider than that. I don't see how Estrada gets anything above a draw now that I've watched it a second time. So, yeah, don't want to call it a robbery, but I think this really went the wrong way. I think it went the wrong way, and I really do hope that there would be a rematch, although I don't know how much this took out of Gonzalez, as it was a grueling fight nonetheless. So I hope you guys enjoy the fights this weekend, and we'll talk about them next episode. It's over!
I'm gonna go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
And she's strong, man, good boy, you know, just